of youth and of beauty. The analysis of the middle section of Mahler's Das Lied from the Erde will be the focus of this video, continuing the journey we began with the previous one. Hi, I'm Gianmaria Griglio, I'm a conductor and a composer, and welcome to this episode of Conducting Pills, a series where we help you discover and dive deeper into a classical piece or a part of it, taking a look at its structure and phrasing, and sometimes its text. I want to take a second to thank my new patron Virginia Stewart and to remind you that on my Patreon page you can find the full episodes of Conducting Pills with longer music segments and commentary, and the extra episodes tackling technical aspects on top of the live sessions and many other patrons' perks. Now, let's begin. The third movement of Das Lied for the Erde of youth is the least sorrowful and the shortest. The speaker expressed his pain in the first two in different ways and now enjoys the company of friends at the party. The movement opens with two introductory beats by the horn and triangle, followed by a pentatonic scale theme played by the flute and the oboe. Look at the tempo indication, behagelijk heiter, comfortably cheerful. Flutes and clarinets shortly join in a festive atmosphere. The tenor entrance is marked by a line mostly built on the pentatonic scale. And notice the marking of the strings. Saltando literally means jumping. Everything here is light and exotically colored, leaving behind the gloominess of the previous movements. In the middle of the little pool stands a pavilion of green and white porcelain. The second part of the phrase takes an arching shape, seemingly less jumpy in the singer's line. Like a tiger's back arches the bridge of jade over to the pavilion. While the orchestra retained some of that jumping quality in an accompaniment that is, in fact, cut out of the first line of the tenor. At the end of the phrase, the oboes sing the tenor's opening line. There's one more thing, we haven't heard any strings so far. At number 4, we have the first entrance with a single pizzicato of the cellos. See how Mahler keeps everything very light. At number 5, he still keeps only the cellos, divisi in arco and pizzicato. He could have used the basses for the pizzicato, but that would have added a bit more weight to the sound, something he saves for a few bars later. In the little house, friends are sitting beautifully dressed, drinking, chatting. Several are writing verses. The whole paragraph is repeated, detailing the scene. Their silken sleeves slip backwards, their silken caps perch gaily on the back of their necks. The atmosphere is still light, although here and there one can see some shadows, preluding perhaps to the next section. The ruhiger, slower, at number 10 spans off a part of the previous phrase. Look at how Mahler molds the material, creating a seamless transition. From G major we move to G minor, and look at the flutes and oboes, and then the tenor part, it's the Ewig motif. Water surface, everything appears fantastically in a mirror image. The shadows are quickly cast away, and we're back to the music and atmosphere at the beginning, closing the movement in a cheerful way. Everything is standing on its head in the pavilion of green and white porcelain. Like a half moon appears the bridge and inverted arch. Friends, beautifully dressed, are drinking and chatting. Drink and The fourth movement, of beauty, somewhat continues the path laid so far in more than one way. The idea of time gone and youth is inherent to the next story, a girl falling in love with a young man. From a bigger perspective, the story represents love and infatuations in life overall, continuing on the discovery journey of the speaker in matters of life. Notice the tempo indication. Once again, an indication of feeling rather than pace. Comodo, dolcissimo, meaning with ease and extremely sweet. Young maidens are plucking flowers, plucking lotus flowers by the river's edge. The opening figures, trills, dotted rhythms, and the quadruplet of legato and staccato articulations are the ones reappearing the most throughout the movement. The gentleness of the movements goes hand in hand with the movement of the river. We can see the contours of it and the contours of the line with its undulations. The etwas fließend, somewhat flowing, stresses this idea. Amid the bushes and the leaves they sit gathering flowers in their laps and calling teasingly to one another. At number 5, the key opens to an E major, but the overall mood remains the same, blurring the lines between the first and second stanza. The music connects the depiction of the girls at the river and their beauty in one section. Sunlight mirrors their slender limbs and their sweet eyes, and the breeze lifts with wheedling caresses the fabric of their sleeves, bears the magic of the pleasing fragrance through the air. The separation from the next stanza is pretty clear here. Mahler adds a rather extensive orchestral interlude. It starts with the same material of the opening, something we are now very familiar with, but Mahler quickly changes pace just a couple of bars later, starting with the allmählich belebend, gradually invigorating. The material is still recognizable, for example, in the quadruplets of sixteenths, but the runs of the strings and the bassoons and the glissando of the harp add a sweeping energy to this section. Notice also how they're used to create a certain tension. The bassoons are in triplets against the duplets of the flutes, against the alternating groups of 7, 9, or 10 in the cellos and the violas. The dotted rhythm is also present in a sort of battle-like call. The temperature increases to a reinforced fortissimo at rehearsal number 8. The dynamic drops within one bar to a pianissimo dynamic. Is the turbulence about to dissipate? Not nearly. One bar after 8, there's an abrupt fortissimo again, followed once more by a diminuendo. And then a fortissimo and più mosso, faster, with sforzato on every bar. It's an emotional roller coaster introducing the entrance of the male figures. The singer's entrance maintains the character, actually reinforcing it by speeding up the tempo. The energy and vigor is stressed even more by the timpani part. By the way, look at how that same part is reversed in the bassoons and cellos at number 11. Oh look, what a tumult of handsome boys there on the shore on their spirited horses. Shining from afar like the sun's rays, between the branches of green willows trot along the bold companions. Mahler follows up with another orchestral parenthesis full of energy. Look at how he plays with the music material, giving it now a sarcastic accent, now a very feisty one. The exuberance of youth, the energy of the horses, the vigor of life in its prime bursts out in this section, even more than in the previous interlude. Continues the narration. The line is shaped in a way that imitates both the neighing of the horse and its overall movements. The horns of one neighs happily on and shies and rushes away, hooves shaking down, blooms, grass trampling wildly the fallen flowers. Hey! How frenzied his mane flutters and hotly steam his nostrils. The sun rays with its reflection brings the dynamic down to piano. The material is still the same, but the mood is much calmer, reflecting the pacifying effect of nature. Golden sun plays about their form, reflecting them in the clear water. And we land on the most tender and somewhat luscious part. The most beautiful of the girls looks intently at the writer. Look at how languid those violins are, while the violas with a mordent keep the figure of the horse present, even though in the background. And the most beautiful of the maidens sends long looks adoring at him. The story ends with a description of the girl's longing. The music is as calm as it can be, serene and delicate. An orchestral coda closes the movement with tenderness. The gazing fades away, like the writer leaving in the violas, while the last chord is so airy. Two flutes, harmonics of the harp and harmonics of the cellos in the highest register. All of this in a pianissimo with 4p. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button right below the video and ring the bell so you will get notified every time a new video comes out. If you want to support the show monetarily, you can do so on my Patreon page, and if you're interested in conducting technique, follow my Facebook group. All the links are in the description. Let me know in the comments what you think about this piece and if you have any suggestions for future videos, and I look forward to seeing you next week with a new episode of Conducting Pills, when we will go through the third and final part of Mahler's Das Lied from the Erde. In the meanwhile, please continue to enjoy music and be well. Ciao. Gesture. That means that you need to feel less resistance. Everything is playing around the piano dynamic most of the time. You can increase a bit around number 10, following the slightly more intense atmosphere to